Today on Zoo Clues, sayings about animals. Say what? Have you ever heard the saying, blind as a bat? Or sweat like a pig? Where do these sayings come from? Are bats really blind? Do pigs really sweat a lot? We'll find out the truth behind these sayings and many more coming up now on Zoo Clues. The adventure starts here and leads us into the wild and everywhere else animals live. We'll ask questions and discover the answers. Let the investigation begin. This is Zoo Clues. Animal sayings. We use them every day without even thinking about it. Are they true? Where do they come from? Let's find out. Have you ever said that someone sweats like a pig? But wait a minute. Do pigs really sweat a lot? Here's a clue. When it's hot, pigs like to roll around in the mud. Like all warm-blooded mammals, swine need to maintain a balanced body temperature. And for many mammals, humans included, sweating is a way of cooling off because the evaporation of water from our skin pulls heat away from our bodies. But get ready, pigs have very few functional sweat glands. And the ones they do have aren't good at lowering their body heat. So yes, pigs do sweat a little, but it doesn't cool them off. So if you really were to sweat like a pig, you'd hardly be sweating at all. You'd be cool as a cucumber. So what do pigs do to cool down? They roll around in mud. The reason pigs choose to muck around in the mud instead of splash in the water is that mud keeps insects off them and protects them from getting sunburned. That's right, pigs get sunburned. In fact, animals are just as likely to get sunburned as humans. Turns out, mud is a pig's natural sunblock. So where did the phrase sweat like a pig come from? Let's investigate. It actually has nothing to do with this kind of pig and everything to do with this kind, pig iron. When pig iron is made, it has to cool down before it's moved. As it does, lots of water droplets form on it. The pig iron appears to be sweating. What about this one? When someone has a hearty appetite, we might say that the person eats like a horse. So, do horses eat a lot? Well, here's a clue. Horses eat 1 to 2% of their own body weight every day, and a horse can weigh about 1,000 pounds. So the answer is yes, horses eat a lot. So when we say a person eats like a horse, we mean he or she can really put it away. But it also means that you won't gain weight. Like active horses that burn off at least as many calories as they take in, these big eaters somehow manage to stay thin. So where did the phrase eat like a horse come from? Let's investigate. Horses can eat all day long. Place a horse in a grassy field or a stall filled with fresh hay, and it will continue to eat it until it's all gone. Left to graze freely, the average horse eats approximately 20 pounds of alfalfa, clover, grass, or hay in one day. That's a lot of eating. Have you ever heard someone say that a person is as wise as an owl? And have you ever seen a cartoon of an owl wearing glasses and a graduation cap? But wait, are owls really wise? Here's a clue. The eyes and ears take up most of the space in an owl's head, meaning there's not much room left for its brain. So are owls some of the smartest animals? No, they just look that way. They're not even the smartest birds. Parrots are easy to train and can have extensive vocabularies. Hawks can be taught to retrieve objects. Even pigeons are used in behavioral studies and can be trained to get a reward by carrying out certain actions. But most species of owls can't be trained to do even the simplest task. They're great hunting birds though, better than hawks or eagles. But it has nothing to do with their brain. It has to do with the fact that owls have extraordinary night and peripheral vision. So, why do people think owls are wise? Simple. They look smart. An owl's eyes are enormous compared to the size of its head. It looks like they're paying keen attention and having deep intellectual thoughts, but they're not. The English language has many ways of describing a coward, but the word chicken tops the list. Don't be chicken, you're chicken. You're chicken-hearted or chicken-livered. Which brings us to our question. Are chickens chicken? Here's a clue. Chicken is part of the diet of almost every carnivore and omnivore. And yes, they're easily frightened. Aside from humans, the list of animals that prey upon chicken includes skunks, owls, raccoons, snakes, opossums, and bobcats, to name a few. And since chickens can't fight well, they defend themselves by running away. This is how the term chicken came to describe a frightened person. It's interesting to note that hens, which ordinarily are easily frightened, become rather bold after they have babies. If the hen feels the chicks are threatened, she'll puff out the feathers around her neck to look fierce and rush at the threat. To protect her chicks, she'll even peck you, which, by the way, is where the saying henpecked comes from. The phrase crying crocodile tears means that the person doing the crying is faking it to get sympathy or trick someone. So here's the question. Do crocodiles attract prey by crying? Here's a clue. Crocodiles really do cry. And many of them live in salt water and drink it too. But the truth is, crocodiles don't cry to lure in prey. So why do they tear up? Let's investigate. There are a couple of thoughts on this one. Saltwater crocodiles shed tears, as do sea turtles and a number of seagoing birds. It's one of their adaptations to drinking salt water. To desalinate the water, they shed the salt through their tear ducts. The zoologists believe that when crocodiles use their jaw muscles, the bite reflex forces tears out of the glands and ducts near their eyes. Whatever the reason, the phrase has been with us for a long time. It first appeared in print in the year 1400 and was used in a speech by the Archbishop of York and Canterbury in 1563. When we come back, we'll uncover the truth behind more sayings, including blind as a bat and sly as a fox. But first, let's see if you can guess this mystery animal. Here's a clue. It's a fish, and if you were to battle with it, you might begin by saying en garde, a French phrase meaning on your guard, used when preparing to fence. Stay tuned, the answer coming up when we return to Zoo Clues. We're back. Time to reveal our mystery animal. En garde, it's a swordfish. As you can see, swordfish have a long bill that looks like a sword, which is where they got their name. The double-edged sword is much longer than the fish's head, often as long as 4 feet. It's actually an extension of the fish's upper jaw, and in adults takes the place of teeth. It's used for protection and to slice at its prey. You've probably heard somebody who can't find his glasses say, "I'm as blind as a bat without them." It's an expression used all the time. But is it true? Are bats really blind? Here's a clue. To locate and catch prey, bats use echolocation, which largely depends on their ability to hear. But even though they use echolocation, bats are not blind. They're born blind, but gain eyesight from the time they're 7 to 9 days old. And the fact is, all 1,100 bat species can see, and see pretty well. So where did the expression come from? Let's investigate. It probably started because of the way bats fly around, darting here and there at night. That's how bats behave when they're hunting insects. But to us, it looks like the bat has no sense of where it's headed and might be blind. But bats can't actually see all that well at night. Instead, they use echolocation by emitting a high squeaking sound. As the sound travels outward, it hits objects and bounces back toward the bat. These sound waves tell the bat where objects are so they can be avoided. Bats fly safely at night by using their ears, not their eyes. If you're a hard worker, people might say you work like a dog. But these days, dogs seem to lead a fairly leisurely existence. So, do dogs really work hard? Well, here's a clue. Ancient Egyptian wall writings dating back to 4000 BC depict dogs on leashes. The hardest work domesticated dogs perform might be fetching a ball we've thrown across the yard. But throughout history, many dogs have been relied on for work and services. The Egyptians, Greeks, Persians, Britons, and Romans used dogs in battle. Attila the Hun used large dogs to stand as sentries around his camps. And shepherd tribes bred sheepdogs to herd and guard livestock. Other breeds were developed for farm labor, such as the Schnauzer, the German Pinscher, the Bernese Mountain Dog, and the Greater Swiss Mountain Dog. Doberman Pinschers from Germany are guard dogs. The Bull Mastiff from England protected game estates from poachers. The Black Russian Terrier from Russia was also a guard dog. The Mastiff served in the army of the Roman Empire. So the answer is yes. And let's not forget sled dogs. These Alaskan Huskies love to work. In fact, they love it so much, it looks a lot like play. Foxes are best known as sly creatures. So when we think someone is a schemer, we might say he's sly as a fox. Which brings us to the next question. Are foxes sly? Need a clue? Foxes hunt for extra food after they've eaten, so they can store it to eat at a later time. The answer is yes. Foxes are sly. Let's investigate. Thanks to their sharp eyesight, smelling, and hearing, foxes find ways to stay ahead. Their ears are so powerful that they can hear an earthworm moving on the ground. Foxes are one of the most opportunistic animals around and will adapt to whatever homes they can find. That's why they live everywhere from forests to mountains to the outskirts of farms. Yes, these clever creatures have earned every bit of their cliché. What about this animal saying? Ever heard someone say that a person sleeps like a bear? Well, do bears sleep a lot? Need a clue? Many bears that live in cold climates hibernate during the winter. So the answer is yes. Bears do more than sleep a lot. Most species of bears spend the entire winter in a deep sleep, which is how they cope with a shortage of food. When they're less active, they use less energy, which enables them to live on the fat they've stored up until food is available again. During hibernation, a bear's eyes can be open, but it'll be groggy. Its body gets a little cooler, but not as cold as other hibernating animals. Since it mostly sleeps and lies around, the body fat that it's stored in anticipation of winter lasts longer. It doesn't take too much body fuel to sleep. In fact, during hibernation, a bear makes its own water and recycles waste. Even so, it will lose about 8 pounds a week. In spring, the bears wake up and leave the den. They'll be thin and very hungry. When we come back, are bees busy? And did curiosity really kill the cat? But first, it's time to identify another mystery animal. This one looks easy, but you could be easily fooled. Here's a clue. If it looks like a duck, swims like a duck, and quacks like a duck, then it probably is a duck. Or is it? Don't go away. The answer coming up next on Zoo Clues. We're back. Time to reveal our mystery animal. What you're looking at is clearly not a duck. It's the duck-billed platypus. One of the most bizarre-looking animals in the world. It's like Dr. Frankenstein took a bunch of spare parts from other animals and stitched them together. It has a tail and fur like a beaver, a bill and webbed feet like a duck, produces venom like a snake, lays eggs like a chicken, but nurses its young with milk like a mammal. These creatures are so bizarre looking that the first biologist to study them thought someone was playing a joke on him. But thousands of platypuses live in the swamps, lakes, and rivers of eastern Australia and parts of Tasmania. They grow to about 18 inches in length and weigh around 3 pounds. Busy as a bee. Now that's an animal saying you must have heard. So what do you think? Are bees really that busy? Here's a clue. Together, a hive of bees has to fly a collective 100,000 miles just to make 2 pounds of honey. So the answer is yes, bees are really darn busy. You think you work hard? A honeybee works up to 12 hours a day depending on its role. Worker bees that gather nectar spend nearly every hour of the daylight outside. Those that work in the nest don't have it any easier. They buzz around the clock, tending to the honeycombs and fanning their wings to keep the nest cool, but they get to take union breaks. Queens are busy too, laying more than 1,000 eggs each day. To remain effective, bees take the day off if the temperature drops into the 50s, if it looks like it's going to rain, or if there are strong winds. But they make up for lost time by working overtime on sunny days. Another animal saying that describes someone who's a good worker is industrious as an ant. So we know that bees are busy, but are ants really industrious? Here's a clue. An ant can lift 20 times its own body weight. A recent study at the University of Arizona looked at this very question. The study didn't just consider if the ants got their work done, but examined if they went about it in a way that used their time and skills efficiently. The results were rather surprising. After analyzing 300 hours of video of ants in action, the conclusion was that ants are not the least bit industrious. It turns out that the worker ants that do all the work weren't all that good at their jobs. And the other ants didn't seem to recognize the workers' lack of ability. Some worker ants just watched, letting others do their work. And in some cases, a single hardworking ant did the majority of the work in the colony. It may sound impressive that an ant can lift 20 times its own body weight, but if it's not doing any lifting, it doesn't matter how much weight it can lift. So, surprisingly, the answer to our question is that ants may look busy as a bee, but they're hardly industrious. The saying, "Curiosity killed the cat," is used to warn somebody of the dangers of being a little too inquisitive. So the question is, are cats unusually curious? Here's a clue. Cats are predators that like to hunt and explore. So the answer is yes. Cats are very inquisitive. Because they're predators, cats enjoy hunting and exploring. They're very curious about their surroundings. Ever notice how a young kitten will usually become alert at any unusual noise, movement, or new object and make a slow, stealthy, and very determined approach to investigate and then pounce? Cats generally display curious behavior, regularly climbing up furniture and crawling into small dark spaces. This stems from a cat's instinctive behavior as a hunter. Think about how large cats like jaguars and leopards hunt. They often stalk prey from concealed locations, either from high up in trees or creeping in the shadows, and usually at night. Cats that live in the wild have to be prepared for any inevitability, and being inquisitive helps them know the world around them and ultimately helps them survive. Whether or not their curiosity might lead to their demise is a risk they're very willing to take. How about the phrase, "open a can of worms"? It means there's a complicated situation that's likely to cause problems and is best left alone. So, how did this animal saying get started? Here's a clue. Fishermen use worms as bait. It's not exactly clear where the phrase comes from, but it's likely that it was first uttered in the 1950s, back when bait stores sold worms in cans. As any fisherman would discover, it's extremely hard to keep worms inside an open can. They just squirm out. So you either have to fish really fast or spend your time corralling worms. Maybe it's better just to keep the can sealed and hope the fish like to eat hooks. There are more than 4,400 different types of worms. The most common type is the earthworm, which accounts for at least 2,700 species. They're essential to plant life. The holes and tunnels they make provide pathways for water to reach plant roots in the ground. The saying, "like a moth to a flame," refers to being irresistibly attracted to something deadly or dangerous. Which brings us to this question. Are moths really attracted to flames? Here's a clue. We all know that moths tend to fly toward light, but that may not mean they're attracted to it. Scientists have many different theories. The most accepted is this. Moths aren't so much attracted to a flame or other bright light as they are disoriented by it. Let's investigate. Like many flying insects, moths are able to find their way partly by using light as a compass. When the source of light is the sun or moon, that light source is very distant and they can move toward it without running into it. The light also shines more or less in a straight line. Now consider what happens when the light source is a nearby flickering candle. The moth tries to do what it has evolved to do under sunlight or moonlight. That is, maintain a constant angle to the source. And as it does this, it spirals in toward the light. So the moth seems attracted to the light, so much so that it might end up drawn into the flame. Now it's time to identify another mystery animal. This colorful bird is known for its equally colorful and massive bill. Don't go away, the answer coming up next on Zoo Clues. We're back. Time to reveal our mystery animal. Did you figure it out? It's a toucan. Toucans live deep in the tropics of South America, but their enormous rainbow bills have made them world famous. But the bill is very sharp with saw-like edges. The toucan uses it to squash the many kinds of fruit that it eats. While it looks quite threatening, it's very light, made up of bone and spongy tissue. and you'll probably hear toucans in the forest before you see them. They're pretty loud. Now it's time for Animal Oddities, where we bring you the most unique, strange, and amazing animals from all around the world. Today's animal oddity, the porcupine. Let's get right to the point. Porcupines cannot shoot their quills. Their quills are made out of keratin, the same substance found in human hair and fingernails. The quills lie flat on a porcupine until it's threatened. Then they stand at attention to deter predators. And when a porcupine loses a quill, it just grows a new one. In fact, a single animal may have up to 30,000 quills. Porcupines are found in two main regions of the world, so they're grouped into Old World and New World porcupines. Old World porcupines are found in Europe, Africa, and Asia. Some examples are the North African crested porcupine, African brush-tailed porcupine, and Indian crested porcupine. New World porcupines are found throughout the Americas. Some examples are the North American porcupine, Mexican hairy dwarf porcupine, and the Brazilian porcupine. Old World porcupines spend their life on the ground. They're fairly social, sometimes traveling in pairs. They find shelter in caves, crevices, holes, or burrows. They don't climb or jump very well, but are excellent swimmers. In contrast, New World porcupines spend most of their time alone. They move through the trees and live in tree nests, rock crevices, brush, logs, and in tangles of roots. Porcupines are nocturnal and have a great sense of smell. They can also be very curious and sweet. Just be careful not to hug one, obviously. That's all the time we have this week. Join us again next week when we'll challenge you with more brain-busting animal questions and their amazing answers on Zoo Clues.